Can we talk about the recess appointments? Because in the discussion about Trump needs to get his cabinet secretaries confirmed, he needs to get the judges he wants on the bench and so on. He is pushing right now. It doesn't seem an accident now that because we're having this leadership debate for like a pledge that the Senate will allow recess appointments by him. And can you just explain to the audience what that means? Because most people have no idea what exactly he's asking you for.
So number one, I believe that we should do it. So what happens is the president will have the authority to make appointments. And he said non-judicial, which I agree with that, non-judicial appointments, as long as we're out of session for 10 days. Now, it's been done in the past. I think Bill Clinton did over 100 appointments that way. I think even George W. Bush did almost 170 appointments that way. Mm-hmm. Barack Obama did some. The only person that hasn't been allowed to do it is Donald Trump. So I think we ought to do everything we can do to get his nominees done. We know Chuck Schumer's going to try to slow it down and prevent them from starting their jobs. So doing recess appointments, I think, is something we ought to do. We ought to figure out as a conference how to get that done.
But can I just ask you, so is it the case that if you wanted to, let's say you win Senate Majority Leader, if you wanted to, could you say we're not doing any recess appointments and you could stop that? You could stop him making temporary appointments if you wanted to?
Yeah, they've done it before. What they do is you never get out of session for more than 10 days. So you just, even if you're off, you have somebody come in and you have a pro forma session. That's what they did to Donald Trump his first 4 years. They never allowed him to do any recess appointments by doing that. I believe we ought to let him do recess appointments. There's a way to do it. We should talk to him about who he wants to do. Make sure Republican senators don't have a problem with them. I think we're all going to be very supportive of his nominees. If you look at the nominees he's done so far, I think they'll easily get all Republican senators to support them. Yes. Lee Zeldin, all these individuals.
EPA.
Elise Stefanik, all of them will get 100. I can't imagine a Republican senator not supporting them.
No, I think all factions of the Republican Party will support all these guys. So yeah, that's an issue because you're getting pushback from some of my friends at National Review saying, if you want to go ahead and cede your constitutional duty, you're supposed to be an independent branch that, has advice and consent. You're supposed to confer. You shouldn't just cede that duty just because you want to make President Trump happy. What do you say to those folks in the Republican Party?
I agree with that. But I think the issue is not that we're ceding our authority. What we're saying is we know that Chuck Schumer is not going to act in a responsible manner to allow Donald Trump to put his cabinet together and get his nominees in place. So if that's the case, and there is a way for the minority to slow the process down, make it very difficult for these nominees to all get confirmed, then we're going to have to figure out how do we, on the other side, work with Donald Trump to get his nominees done. So I think there's a way to do it. I think our Republican caucus will support it. I clearly support using the recess process to do it. And we can do it in a manner that we're comfortable with the people that Donald Trump is nominating. If somebody was not, we can say, we're okay with these, but not these. So, but I think we ought to do everything we can. And the other thing was we need a transparent process so Donald Trump quickly gets everybody in place. If somebody has major problems with people, let's make sure that the Trump administration knows it right away and see if we can resolve it. As a business guy, what I always did was talk to people, find out what the common ground is, find out where the issues are, and then go try to solve them. And that's what we ought to be doing with nominees.
I feel like Trump is transactional and probably doesn't have his heart set on any one particular person for any one particular role, maybe other than the ones that we're hearing about right now, right? Like his first appointments are going to be his favorites and the ones he feels really strongly about. You don't even have to confirm the border czar. That's a non-confirmed position. Stephen Miller's, he works for Trump. That's not something that needs to be confirmed. So a lot of these roles you're not going to have to get involved in. And Secretary of State, everybody in the Senate seems to really like Marco Rubio and so on. I think you're right about Stefanik. So we'll see. We'll find out how that goes. I want to ask you two other questions, if you don't mind, from the other side, why they say, well, maybe we have doubts about Senator Rick Scott, so you can convince people who need convincing. There are two objections, as far as I can tell. Brit Hume was on Fox News espousing one of them. It has to do with when you ran the group that tries to get more Republicans elected to the Senate back in 2022. And we didn't have the greatest red wave in 2022. And so Brit is giving voice to some of the criticisms around you connected to that. Here it is.
I actually think Senator Scott's kind of a long shot. The reason being that, for example, he was the head of the National Republican Senatorial Committee in the 21-22 election cycle, raised a ton of money. As you may recall, the Republicans had a very disappointing result in those midterm elections. And there were a lot of questions about where all that money went, why it was all spent so early in the process, and how much of it was spent by Scott to boost himself. And I don't think he's close to a lot of senators. And I think this pressure from Trump world to support him is likely to backfire.
All right, so we spoke to that last point already, but what do you make of that? The money and it wasn't well spent or well planned, he's saying, for those elections.
Well, first off, clearly, we all wanted to get a majority and we didn't. And that, first off, let's all acknowledge we wanted to get a majority in 22 and we didn't. Fortunately, we got a majority barely in the House. But I can tell you, everybody worked their butts off to get a majority. We had candidates that worked their butts off. We spent the money to get our candidates elected. But you're right, it was a disappointing year. But I can tell you that our candidates worked hard. The people at the NRC worked hard, and I'm glad we have a majority this time. I want to thank everybody that ran this time and what they did. And I think a lot of it was Trump ran a great race, which helped a lot of us. But you're right. I wish that we would have gotten a majority. And I can tell you, we all worked our butts off. And unfortunately, sometimes you win and sometimes you don't.
Mm-hmm. Few years later, look at you now. Lastly, my pal Dana Lash, she is not your fan. You may know her. She's an amazing person, and she's very big on the pro-Second Amendment thing. And she does not like the fact that you signed a red flag law. She says that you, hold on, I want to get her objection correctly. She says you steamrolled over Second, Fourth, and Fifth Amendment rights as governor, that you backed amnesty. And there is a group called the American Firearms Association that wants to know whether you would support waiting periods on Second Amendment rights, whether you would abolish the ATF. They've got some concerns about whether we're going to be looking at more red flag laws under your leadership, or whether you're pro-2A enough.
Well, first off, I'm a big supporter of the Second Amendment. I believe in the Second Amendment. I believe it's very important we defend the Second Amendment. So in Florida, what the legislature passed was a bill after the Parkland shooting that basically said, if you're threatening harm to yourself or threatening harm to somebody else, you can go, somebody that knows you can go to law enforcement, and law enforcement can go to the courts, and the courts for a short period of time can say you cannot have that weapon, but they have to go to the court system. It has to be done by law enforcement, and it's clearly not permanent. It was passed by the Florida House and Senate. I left 6 years ago. They've decided not to repeal it because it has worked in Florida. We put a lot of effort in to make sure we had a lot of school safety in our state. We've added law enforcement in all of our public schools. We've added a lot of barriers. We added mental health counselors. We did a lot of things to make sure our schools are safe. And this was one as a result of the 17 people died at Marjory Stoneman Douglas. And if you talk to sheriffs in our state, it's worked. It's kept people safe, and it has not infringed on anybody's Second Amendment rights.
Okay. That makes sense. I mean, you should go on her podcast, because she'll have some tough questions for you on this that I don't have, because this isn't really my issue, to be perfectly honest. But yeah, that's one of the objections. The thing that I wonder about, Senator, is will we see any difference? You know, Thune and Cornyn, they've said some negative things about Trump. I mean, I've seen that. They kind of ripped on him when E. Jean Carroll came out. They haven't been like staunch defenders of his, unlike yourself. But they are Republicans, and it's not like you versus a Democrat. So, why should people care? You want to get Trump's agenda through, yes, but won't all three of you get Trump's agendas through?
You would hope so. Well, both John Thune and John Cornyn are friends, and their colleagues. I've worked with them for 6 years since I've been up here. So I just tell you, my background as a business guy completely, which is, I think the way you get things done in life is you create a process. You create a team. You measure the living daylights out of results. I built the largest hospital company in the world. I built a variety of manufacturing companies. I was the governor of Florida. We became #1 in higher education, top 5 in K-12 education, 47-year low in our crime rate. We did it we built a team. We worked every day in a process, and we measured things. My belief, that's what we need going forward if we're going to get things accomplished.
For those of us holding our breath for the past several months, we can finally exhale. The sky seems a little bluer, doesn't it? Work can finally be done on the major issues this country's facing, one of the most significant being our national debt. The fact is, our nation's broke, and that debt is a house of cards that cannot be quickly dismantled. So the strategy remains the same. You might want to diversify your savings. This is why I want to tell you about Birch Gold. So many things are out of our control, out of our president's control for that matter. So it can be important to have a safe haven for your savings. Birch Gold Group can help you convert an IRA or 401k into an IRA in physical gold. And the best news is it does not cost you 1 cent out of pocket. Just text MK to 989898 to get your free info kit. Plus, right now through Black Friday, you're going to receive a free 1-ounce silver eagle coin for every $5,000 purchased. Protect your savings with Birch Gold. Text MK to 989898 and claim your eligibility for free silver today. Thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.